Now we come to another sutta, 4.19.186. Now a certain monk came to visit the Exalted One, and on coming to him saluted the Exalted One and sat down at one side. As he sat thus, that monk said this to the Exalted One, "Pray, Lord, by what is the world led? By what is the world drawn along? Under the sway of what that has arisen does it go?" And the Buddha said, well said, monk, sadhu, sadhu. Happy is your approach to a question. Goodly is your ready wit, and lovely is your questioning. Your question is thus, is it not, monk? Pray, Lord, by what is the world led? By what is the world drawn along? Under the sway of what that has arisen does it go? And the monk said, it is, Lord. Well, monk, the world is led by mind, citta. By mind it is drawn along. By mind, when mind has arisen, it goes under its sway. That is well said, Lord, replied that monk, welcoming what was said by the Exalted One, and after thanking him, asked another question. As to the common saying, widely learned, one who knows Dhamma by heart, pray, Lord, of what sort is one widely learned who knows Dhamma by heart? Well said, monk. Happy is your approach to a question. Goodly is your ready wit, and lovely is your questioning. You ask this, do you not? Of what sort is one widely learned who knows Dhamma by heart? I do, Lord. Well, monk, I have taught Dhamma widely. Now, if a monk understands the meaning and text of Dhamma, even if it be but a stanza of 4 lines, and be set on living in accordance with Dhamma, he may well be called one widely learned who knows Dhamma by heart. It is well said, Lord, replied that monk, welcoming what was said by the Exalted One, and after thanking him, asked another question. As to the common saying, Lord, learned of penetrative wisdom, pray, Lord, of what sort is one learned of penetrative wisdom? Well said, monk. Happy is your approach to a question, etc. You ask this, do you not? Of what sort is one learned of penetrative wisdom? I do, Lord. In this case, monk, a monk hears it said, this is dukkha, ill. But by wisdom he penetrates the meaning of that saying and sees that it is so. He hears it said, this is the arising of dukkha, this is the ending of dukkha, this is the practice going to the ending of dukkha. By wisdom he penetrates the meaning of that saying and sees that it is so. Thus, monk, he is learned of penetrative wisdom. It is well said, Lord, replied that monk, and put yet another question. As to the common saying, wise, of great wisdom, pray, Lord, of what sort is one who is wise, of great wisdom? Well said, monk, etc., as before. You ask this, do you not? Who is wise, of great wisdom? I do, Lord. Well, monk, in this case, he who is wise, of great wisdom, thinks not with a view to harm either himself or another, or both alike. So thinking, he thinks with a view to the profit of self, of another, both of self and of another, to the profit of the whole world. Thus, monk, one is wise, of great wisdom. That's the end of the sutta. So, you see, in this sutta, you can see the Buddha's metta, the Buddha's loving kindness. When this monk asked him a question, he said, sadhu, sadhu to the monk and praised the monk. He said, happy is your approach to a question. Goodly is your ready wit and lovely is your questioning. Then only replied the monk. So the first one, he said that the world is led along by thought or by mind, citta. This word citta can mean thought, it can mean mind. So, because our mind is active, that the world is basically in our mind. It is drawn along by mind. So by this is meant that the Buddha said that the world actually arises in our sixth consciousness. When our mind, the sixth consciousness works, then you get the world. When the sixth consciousness stops, there is no world. So the Buddha said that the world arises dependent on the sixth consciousness, on the mind. Then the second one, the Buddha said, a monk is called widely learned. who knows Dhamma by heart, if he knows even a few lines of Dhamma, but he lives according to Dhamma. So it's very important not only to know Dhamma, but to live in accordance to Dhamma. Then you are widely learned and you know Dhamma by heart. And the third one, one who is learned of penetrative wisdom, is one who understands the four Aryan truths. Then, because he understands the four Aryan truths, his wisdom is penetrative. Then the fourth one is wise of great wisdom, is one who does not harm himself, does not harm others. He's a harmless person, and you can have that if you don't have that ego, you don't have that great self, because the great self brings along selfishness, and when we have selfishness to benefit ourselves, sometimes we harm others. So that's the end of the sutta. Now sutta 4.19.190. On a certain occasion, the Exalted One was staying near Savatthi in East Park at the storied house of Megara's mother. Now on that occasion, the Exalted One was sitting surrounded by the Sangha of monks, that day being the Sabbath. I stop here for a while to explain this word Sabbath. The word Sabbath is actually the Uposatha day. Uposatha day for monks is the 15th day, the full moon day, 15th day of the lunar calendar, and the last day of the lunar calendar. That is for Theravada monks, the 30th, or sometimes there is no 30th, there is the 29th day. And these are the 2 days when the monks come together. Sometimes they may be staying in different areas, but they come together and hold the Patimokkha, they recite the precepts. So that is the Uposatha day for monks. And the Uposatha day for lay people are 4 days in the month. The 8th day, the 15th day, the 23rd day, and the 30th day. This 30th day in Theravada was changed by the Mahayana to the first day. And that's why in Malaysia, we are very familiar with the first day of the lunar month, Choyat. That's because the Mahayana, they purposely changed that day so that they didn't want it to be the same as Theravada. So on those days, lay people were advised by the Buddha to keep the 8 precepts. Because the Buddha said, as lay people, you don't have time to practice every day. Keep the 8 precepts at least once a week. You should remember and practice the 8 precepts. And this teaching was a very early Indian teaching, and it might have gone from there into Christianity. Because Jesus was said to have gone to India to learn, so he might have got that into Christianity, and from there he went to Islam. So like the Sabbath day for Christians is Sunday, and for Muslims it's Friday. So because we are one of the earliest who practice this Uposatha day, we should not forget it, we should not lose it, we should always remember to practice it. In nowadays, it might not be convenient to follow the lunar calendar. Might be more convenient to choose, for example, a Sunday, every Sunday to keep the 8 precepts. If you can't keep it in a temple or a Buddhist society, try to keep it at home. Then to continue the sutta. Then the Exalted One, after scanning the order of monks, the Sangha of monks, as they sat in perfect silence, addressed the monks, saying, "Monks, this company is free from idle words and idle talk. It is pure and established in the essential. Monks, such an order of monks as this is a company such as it would be hard to find anywhere in the world. Such an order of monks as this is worshipful, worthy of honor and gifts, worthy of worship with clasped hands upraised, a field of merit unsurpassed for the world. Monks, such an order of monks as this is a company to which even a little being given is much, to which much being given is more. Such an order of monks as this is a company worth going many a mile to see, even if one had to carry his food in a bag on his shoulder. Of such a sort is this order of monks." I'll stop here for a moment. So you see, the Buddha, during the Buddha's time, those monks were really really monks, really worthy of respect, worthy of veneration, a field of merit unsurpassed. And it's not easy to find such monks. If you can get such a sangha of monks, the Buddha said, it's worth going a long distance to see. And even you give a little to them, it becomes much in terms of merit to you as a giver. And if you give more, it is even much more in terms of merit. So, if you can find anywhere such a sangha of monks, it will be very, very lucky. Very, very lucky. It's very difficult to find a sangha of extremely good monks. Then the Buddha continued, monks, there are abiding in this sangha of monks, or order of monks, those who have won access to devas. There are those who have won access to Brahma. There are those who have won access to the imperturbable. There are abiding in this order of monks, those who have won access to the Aryan. And how has a monk won access to the devas? Herein a monk, aloof from sense desires and so forth, having attained to the first jhana, abides therein. So with the second, third and fourth jhanas, that is how a monk has won access to the devas. And how has a monk won access to Brahma? Herein a monk with heart possessed of goodwill, of compassion, of joy, with a heart possessed of equanimity, abides suffusing 1/4 of the world, also the second, third and fourth quarters, and in like manner above, below, across, everywhere, for all sorts and conditions, abides suffusing the whole world with a heart possessed of goodwill, compassion, joy and equanimity that is widespread, grown great and boundless, without enmity and untroubled. That is how a monk has won access to Brahma. And how has a monk won access to the imperturbable? Herein a monk, passing utterly beyond all consciousness of objects, by ending the consciousness of reaction, by disregarding consciousness of diversity, thinking infinite is space, attains and abides in the sphere of infinite space. Passing utterly beyond the sphere of infinite space, reaching the sphere of infinite consciousness, thinking infinite is consciousness, he abides in the sphere of infinite consciousness. Similarly, in the sphere of nothingness, and then in the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. Thus a monk has won access to the imperturbable. And how has a monk won access to the Aryan? Herein a monk understands that as it really is, this is ill or dukkha. This is the arising of dukkha. This is the ending of dukkha. This is the practice going to the ending of dukkha. Thus a monk has won access to the Aryan. So you see, these are the types of monks. The first one, he has won access to the devas, are those who have attained the jhanas. Here, I think does not refer to the jhana plane devas, even those in the sensual realm, because these monks does not refer to those who abide in jhana and all the time. Because if a monk abides in jhana and constantly experiences the bliss of jhana and enjoys the bliss of jhana and longs for the bliss of jhana, then these monks will be reborn in the jhana plane. But if they just attain jhana and they don't abide in jhana too long, it is possible that they just go to the lower planes. But that is just my personal opinion. It might be that depending on the monk, it might also be born into the jhana planes. And then the Brahma planes are those who constantly abide in the 4 Brahma viharas. Metta, Karuna, Mudita and Upeka. And so they attain to the Brahma plane. And then the imperturbable, those who have gone to the plane of the Arupa jhanas. And then the Aryans are those who understand the 4 noble truths. So these are the types of monks who have attained super normal attainments. These are called supernormal attainments, and here it also includes the jhanas. That's why sometimes if you talk about supernormal attainments, that means in a way that is stages of holiness also. you could say. So these include the jhana attainments and even the abhinyas, the higher knowledges, which are basically psychic powers, because those are stepping stones to the ending of the asavas, to the attainment of the asavas. That's why you find in the suttas that the Buddha praised those monks who have these abhinyas, higher abhinyas, and it is one of the aims of the holy life. They are not to be actually looked down. There are some people, they think that they look down on these psychic powers. Nothing to look down. They are higher attainments which are difficult to attain, not normally, not so easily attainable by people, and they are praised by the Buddhas. We are on the second book, coming to the end of the second book. We are on the chapter of the Fours. Now we come to Sutta 4.20.191. The Buddha said, monks, 4 advantages are to be looked for from the frequent verbal recitation of teachings heard with the ear, from considering them in the mind, from thoroughly penetrating them by view. What are the 4? Herein among masters Dhamma, those teachings heard with the ear, often recited, considered by the mind, are thoroughly penetrated by view. He making an end with memory confused is reborn in a certain company of devas. There the happy ones recite to him Dhamma verses. Slow to arise in him, monks, is memory, but that being very quickly reaches excellence. This is the first advantage to be looked for from the frequent verbal recitation of teachings heard with the ear, from considering them by the mind, from thoroughly penetrating them by view. Then again, among masters Dhamma and practices frequent recitation, reflection upon, and penetrates the teachings. He making an end with memory confused is reborn in a certain company of devas. There indeed the happy ones recite not to him Dhamma verses, but maybe some monk who has psychic power, who has won mastery of mind, is teaching Dhamma to a company of devas. Then it occurs to him, why, this is just the Dhamma Vinaya according to which formerly I practiced the holy life. Slow to arise, monks, in him is memory, but that being very quickly reaches excellence. It is just as if a man skilled in the sound of drums, while going along the high road, should hear the sound of a drum. He would have no doubt or uncertainty as to whether it was the sound of a drum or not, but would just conclude that it was so. In the same way, monks, among masters Dhamma, those teachings heard with the ear, often recited, reflected upon, are thoroughly penetrated by view. Slow to arise in him, monks, is memory, but that being very quickly reaches excellence. This is the second advantage to be looked for from the frequent verbal recitation of teachings heard with the ear, from considering them by the mind, from thoroughly penetrating them by view. Then again, monks, among masters Dhamma, and practices frequent recitation, reflection upon, and penetrates the teachings. He is born in a certain company of devas. There indeed the happy ones recite not to him Dhamma verses, nor does some monk who has psychic power, one who has won mastery of mind, teach Dhamma to a company of devas. But maybe some deva is teaching Dhamma to a company of devas. Then it occurs to him, why, this is just the Dhamma Vinaya according to which I formerly practiced the holy life. Slow to arise in him, monks, is memory, but that being very quickly reaches excellence. It is just as if a man skilled in the sound of conches, while going along the high road, should hear the sound of a conch. He would have no doubt or uncertainty as to whether it was the sound of a conch or not, but would just conclude that it was so. In the same way, monks, a monk masters Dhamma, etc. Slow to arise in him, monks, is memory, but that being very quickly reaches excellence. This is the third advantage to be looked for from the frequent verbal recitation of teachings, from reflecting upon them, from thoroughly penetrating them by view. Yet again, monks, a monk masters Dhamma and practices frequent recitation, reflection upon, and penetrates the teachings, and is reborn in a certain company of devas. There indeed the happy ones recite not to him Dhamma verses, nor does some monk who has psychic power, who has won mastery of mind, teach Dhamma to a company of devas. Nor yet does some deva teach Dhamma to a company of devas. But maybe someone apparitionally reborn there is reviving the memory of some other one apparitionally reborn. He says, "Do you remember, good sir? Do you remember, good sir, how formerly we used to practice the holy life?" Then the other says, "I do indeed remember, good sir, I do indeed remember." Slow to arise, monks, in him is memory, but that being very quickly reaches excellence. It is just as if two playmates who used to play at mud pies together were to meet some time or other. Then one of them says to the other, "Say, old man, do you remember this? Do you remember that?" And the other replies, "I do indeed remember, old man, I do indeed remember." Just in the same way, monks, a monk masters Dhamma and practices frequent recitation, reflection upon the teachings, and are thoroughly penetrated, and the teachings are thoroughly penetrated by view. Being reborn, his memory is confused, but that being very quickly reaches excellence. This, monks, is the fourth advantage to be looked for from the frequent verbal recitation of teachings, from reflecting upon them, from thoroughly penetrating them by view. So, monks, these are the four advantages to be looked for. So in this sutta, the Buddha is trying to say that it is important to frequently, firstly, to listen to the Dhamma, then to recite the Dhamma, reflect upon the Dhamma and understand the Dhamma. And then it is possible that next time, in our next life, when we hear Dhamma, the memory slowly comes back. And actually all this memory in our subconscious, it is not so far away sometimes. Like we meet somebody and then we have a feeling that we like that person very much. Or sometimes we meet somebody and we think that the face is very familiar. Very, very familiar, even though it's the first time we meet that person. So there are other instances, some people, they have peculiar experience that tells them that certain things they know from the past life. But this one, in this sutta, the Buddha is talking more about devas, because a person who is born in the deva realm as a heavenly being, the mind is more developed, and these devas, it appears from the suttas, very frequently can remember their past life, at least one past life. Although for us human beings, it is difficult, and even more difficult for animals and the lower beings. So now we come to the next sutta, 4.20.192. The Buddha said, "Monks, these four conditions are to be understood by other four conditions." What are the four? Monks, it is by association that a man's virtue is to be understood, and that too after a long time, not casually, by close attention, not by inattention, by a wise man, not a fool. Monks, it is by living with him that a man's integrity is to be understood, and that too after a long time, not casually, by close attention, not by inattention, by a wise man, not a fool. Monks, it is in times of distress that a man's courage is to be understood, and that too after a long time, not casually, by close attention, not by inattention, by a wise man, not a fool. Monks, it is by conversation with him that a man's wisdom is to be understood, and that too after a long time, not casually, by close attention, not by inattention, by a wise man, not a fool. Now I said, it is by association that a man's virtue is to be understood, and that too after a long time, etc. Owing to what did I say thus? In this case, monks, a person knows thus of another person by associating with him. For a long time, this worthy has been one whose deeds are incongruous, inconsistent, shady and spotted. His deeds are not consistent, his habits are not consistent with morals. This worthy is immoral, he is not virtuous. Herein again, monks, by associating with him, one knows thus of another person. For a long time, this worthy has been one whose deeds are congruous, consistent, not shady, not spotted. His deeds are consistent, his habits are consistent with morals. This worthy is moral, he is virtuous. Indeed, monks, it is by association that a monk's virtue is to be understood, and that too after a long time, etc. What was said thus was owing to this. Now I said, it is by living with him that a man's integrity is to be understood. Owing to what did I say this? In this case, monks, a person knows thus of another person by living with him. This worthy, when with one person, behaves in one way, when with two persons in another way, when with three in yet another way, again otherwise when with many. In his former behavior he departs from his latter behavior. This worthy is not honest in his behavior. This worthy is dishonest. In this case again, monks, a person knows another by living with him. So he concludes, this worthy when with one person behaves just as he does with two, three or many. In his former behavior he departs not from his latter behavior. This worthy is honest, he is not dishonest. Indeed, monks, it is by living with him that a man's integrity is to be understood. What I said was owing to this. Now I said, it is in times of distress that a man's courage is to be understood. Owing to what did I say this? In this case, monks, a certain one afflicted by the loss of relatives or loss of wealth or by the misfortune of sickness thus reflects, verily thus come to be is this living in the world. Thus come to be is the getting of a personality. According to this coming to be of living in the world and getting a personality, 8 world conditions keep the world a-rolling, and the world keeps a-rolling 8 world conditions, namely gain and loss, fame and disrepute, praise and blame, happiness and unhappiness. So he, afflicted by loss of relatives, loss of wealth, or the misfortune of sickness, sorrows, laments, is distressed, and beats his breast, wails and falls into utter bewilderment. But in this case, monks, a certain one, afflicted by the loss of relatives, etc., thus reflects, verily thus come to be is thus living in the world. Thus come to be is the getting of personality. According to this coming to be of living in the world and getting a personality, 8 world conditions keep the world a-rolling, and the world keeps a-rolling 8 world conditions, namely gain and loss, fame and disrepute, praise and blame, happiness and unhappiness. So he, afflicted by the loss of relatives, loss of wealth, or the misfortune of sickness, does not sorrow, does not falter, etc., nor falls into utter bewilderment. Owing to that did I say this. Now I said, it is by conversation with him that a man's wisdom is to be understood. Owing to what did I say this? In this case, monks, a person by conversing with another knows thus of him, judging by this worthy's approach to a question, judging by his intention, judging by his conversation, he is weak in wisdom, he is not wise. What is the cause of that? In the case in question, this worthy utters no profound, profitable sentence that calms, is sublime, is beyond the sphere of mere reasoning, that is subtle and intelligible to the wise. As to Dhamma, that this worthy talks, he is not competent either in brief or in detail to explain its meaning, to show it forth, expound it, lay it open it up, analyze and make it plain. This worthy is weak in wisdom, he is not wise. Just as if monks, a man with good eyesight, standing on the bank of a pool of water, were to see a small fish rising, he would think, judging by the uprise of this fish, judging by the size of the ripple it makes, judging by its speed, this is a small fish, this is not a big fish. Just in the same way, monks, a person by conversing with another knows thus of him, this worthy is weak in wisdom, he is not wise. Herein again, monks, a person by conversing with another knows thus of him, judging by this worthy's approach to a question, judging by his intention, judging by his conversation, he is a wise man, he is not weak in wisdom. What is the cause of that? In the case in question, this worthy can utter a profound, profitable sentence that calms, that is sublime, is beyond the sphere of mere reasoning, that is subtle and intelligible to the wise. As to Dhamma, that this worthy talks, he is competent both in brief and in detail to explain its meaning, to show it forth, expound it, lay it down, open it up, analyze and make it plain. This worthy is a wise man, he is not weak in wisdom. Just as if monks, a man with good eyesight, standing on the bank of a pool of water, were to see a big fish rising, he would think, judging by the uprise of this fish, judging by the size of the ripple it makes, judging by its speed, this is a big fish, this is not a small fish. Just in the same way, monks, a person by conversing with another knows thus of him, judging by this worthy's approach to a question, judging by his intention, judging by his conversation, he is a wise man, he is not weak in wisdom. It is by conversation with him, monks, that a man's wisdom is to be understood. So I said, and that is why I said it. Thus, monks, these 4 conditions are to be understood by these other 4 conditions. That's the end of the sutta. And this sutta, it is quite a good sutta. It's telling us that it takes a long time to know a person actually, and not in a short while. And then you have to pay close attention, not inattention. And then you have to be a wise man, not a fool. Then only you can judge a person. The first one, the Buddha said, was judging his virtue. You see whether his deeds are consistent with the precepts or not. Whether he keeps the precepts or he breaks the precepts. The second one, to check his integrity, whether he's honest or not. You see his behavior with different people. Whether he acts with one type of person in one way and in another type of person he acts differently. Whether in front of you he acts in one way and behind you he acts in another way. Then you know whether he's an honest man or not. Then the third one, to see whether he has courage or not. Then you see whether he is easily overcome by misfortune. When in sickness or loss of wealth or loss of relatives, etc., whether he loses his courage. And then wisdom. Then you by conversation with him, you see whether he talks profitable things or unprofitable things, profound things or shallow things. And whether he is able to explain Dhamma in brief and explain Dhamma in detail, to analyze and make plain the meaning of Dhamma, etc., then you can judge whether this person has wisdom or not. So in other words, we should not judge people hastily. Most people, as you are probably aware, we tend to judge a person at the first meeting very quickly by his looks, by his behavior. Straight away we make certain judgments, and it's not very wise. I think you have heard me talk about the sutta, about the 4 types of pots, the open and the empty pot, the open and the full pot, the closed and the empty pot, and the closed and the full pot. So the same way, difficult to judge a person from the looks. And also, the other thing, especially nowadays, we have to be very, very careful of personality cults. Nowadays, we especially in the religious world, There's a tendency nowadays to have a lot of personality cults. And the Buddha in his wisdom probably foresaw this, because even when the Buddha was alive, he said, we take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. And immediately after the Buddha passed away, there were some Arahant disciples who had very great attainments. And when the lay people were very impressed with them, and these lay people wanted to take refuge with the Arahants, the Arahants said, no, you cannot take refuge with me. You can only take refuge with the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. And even though the Buddha has passed away, we recognize him as our teacher. And that's why whatever other teachers teach, we always compare it with the Buddha, his teachings in the Dhamma, and we also take refuge with the Sangha of Aryas. And so we have to be careful. I think you have heard me last week talk about one sutta. Whenever anybody says that this is the teaching of the Buddha, then you must compare it with the suttas and compare it with the Vinaya, whether it's consistent with the suttas and Vinaya. And the Buddha said that if it does not follow the suttas and the Vinaya, then reject it. But if it follows the sutta and Vinaya, then we can accept it. Nowadays, many people are fascinated by psychic power, or claims of psychic power, or hints of psychic power. We have to be very careful with psychic power, because psychic powers, people actually, holy men with psychic powers, they don't show it, because especially in a monk's precepts, it is not allowed for a monk to show his psychic powers, or to talk about his psychic powers, or to hint about his attainments and psychic powers, etc. And so nowadays you find people chasing after teachers whom they think have psychic powers and supernormal attainments. They are not aware of the fact that some of these psychic displays can be shown through black magic, through mantras, keeping spirits, etc. So I mention this because this is one of the problems that a lot of people are innocently not aware of.